Okay, this lesson is, excuse me, learning target 1 for finding slope for from 2 points. So the last thing we saw was finding the slope given a graph. This is basically the same thing, just just different. All right, so this is from linear functions. Finding this is S4 for IXL. So basically, let's start by using examples from the last lesson. We'll use the first one to find the formula. So for this one here, what we're going to do is use a formula, right? Because they're going to basically give us something like, this is what they're going to do. This is the kind of question we're going to get. You could graph it. You could graph this point, and then graph this point, and then find the slope. But basically this is to show you how to do it without actually graphing it. Alright, but we're going to use the graph to get started. So we're going to use the letter M for slope. This is super important. That is not quite as important as this. This is where we're going with it. Okay? But before we start with our notes, let's just go ahead and understand what's going on. Why do they use the letter M? I have no idea. I've looked it up. It has something to do with different language talking about slope, and I guess the M stands for a different word in a different language, but it means the same thing as slope. And that's just supposing, like one person's like, it seems like, but nobody knows for sure, because they came up with it a very long time ago. All right. So basically, remember that slope, M, now called M, is rise over run, right? So if we look at rise over run, this is the way we talk about it in calculus, the change in your y's. How many y's, how many units is it changing? So we usually count them. And then it's the change in y's over the change in x's. So y's, x's. And so basically, if you look at the change, the word change is basically the difference. And in math, the word difference means subtract. Again, you don't have to copy this down yet. I'll let you know when you need to do notes. So back to normal. There we go. Okay, so basically you take your 3 from here, and you're going to subtract the -1. Okay, or you're going to take the, so that's your rise, that's your y value. Your y value goes in the numerator. Your y values, your y values go in the top. The y values, x, y, they go in the numerator. You're changing your x's, so let's say if you look where that 3 came from, it came from this point here. Okay? So if I go down to this 4, where did it come from? What came from, choose a different color. It came from this point over here. So we took the 3 from here, and then when I went, oh, sorry, my bad. So then when I went to use this 4, I started with, this is my first point, basically. Over here, these ones, they came from this one here and this one here. Okay, so basically you take, these are your y's, these are your y's, these are your x's. color. These are your x's. Alright, so let's do this a little bit better here. Okay, and these are your y's. These are your x's. Notice that these numbers here, both come from here. You don't switch. So your y's, the yellow, go on the top, the orange, go on the bottom, but where do you start? If this is your first point, then you use your 3 from your first point and your 4 from your first point. Okay, so here's the official formula. If you're given 2 points, x and y, and x sub 2, so they call this x sub, like a submarine, down low, submarine. X sub, or subscript, it's really, but we just call it x sub 1, and y sub 1. So this is your first point. This is x sub 2, your second point, y sub 2. So this is your first point, this is your second point. You get to choose whichever one is which. It really doesn't matter. Remember, slope is a constant rate of change. Doesn't matter whether you go left to right. Doesn't matter whether you go right to left. What does matter is that the y's have to be in the numerator. The x's have to be in the denominator. And if you choose to start with your second point, then they both have to be on top of each other like that. You're never gonna do that. That is wrong. You're gonna get the wrong answer. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So in our last example, excuse me, again, I'm gonna give you your notes in a second. So in our last example, basically here's your x sub 1, and your y sub 1, and then you have your x sub 2 and your y sub 2, and you're going to take your second point, this is your second point, and you're going to take your y first, and you're going to subtract whatever that is. Then you're going to take your second point, your x. You're going to subtract your first x. Well, 3 minus negative 1 is 3 plus 1. And 4 minus negative 2 is the same thing as 4 plus 2. And then you simplify. But notice something cool. The order of the points doesn't matter. Let's switch them and see what we get. So notice they put negative 2, negative 1, and then 4, 3. What if they put 4, 3 and called this my first point? Over here, it was my second point. No big deal. Formula is still the same. This is what's going to be important later. But this time I'm going to put this one first. I'm going to subtract this one. I'm going to take this one first. I'm going to subtract this one. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4. Seems like it's different. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. Simplify it, but negative over negative is positive. And what do we get? The same thing. Doesn't matter. What does matter is your y values have to be in the numerator, your x values have to be in the denominator. If you choose that point, you have to put them in the same order. Let's try our new formula with a second example. The last session was a line passing through negative 1, 4. So basically you take your second point and you don't, that is no, you don't do that. That's the most common mistake students will make. You take that one, you put it there. You subtract your other point. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. 2 minus negative 1 is positive 3, which is negative 2.